Some of my favorite YouTube videos to watch are when artists redraw, revisit, or redesign their original characters. These videos always inspire me to revisit my own characters, and so that's what we're going to do today. And just like in my last video, we're going to be exploring my fantasy world that I created in middle school, following my two main characters, Elizabeth and Nathaniel. But this time, we're going into the darker corners of my imagination with our main villain, Arthur, and his minions. Something that I really had to think about when working on Arthur and his design and the ideas around him was I really made Arthur an overpowered character where he used magic and could turn into a dragon and be able to also dual wield swords, and didn't really have a thought about his background, just that he was the main antagonist and he needed to be a formidable force. But as I've grown older and also have taken in a lot more stories revolving fantasy, just really well-written stories in general, a good villain is someone that you can sympathize with, has more than just a drive to gain all the power or just be the antagonist. If you have something that's a little bit more relatable, usually that entices people into the story and makes the character beloved or problematic fave, so on and so forth. So with Arthur, I definitely had to go back and kind of start from scratch in the sense of what was his origin, what was his drive, why was he attacking Elizabeth and her father in the first place, why would he send an assassin and not just do it himself, all of these questions while designing and drawing this new picture. You'll see in these very cringy comic panels and old pictures that I have of him, he has the eye effect that Shan Yu had in Mulan, where there is no white in his eyes. It's all blackened with a colored iris, and I think that will still come into effect, but I'm thinking that will actually come in later on or only happen when he activates his powers, which I will get to in a moment. You'll probably notice in this new picture that there's not just one character, but 4 characters. And you might be thinking, well, what are these other characters? So in my original story, I had these creatures, minions that worked for Arthur. And if you watched my first video, I even talked about one of these larger giant creatures coming to take Nathaniel back because he failed in his attempt at assassination. And by failing, I mean he fell in love with Elizabeth and therefore chose not to kill her or her dad. So Arthur sends a giant minion to go and bring Nathaniel back, basically for punishment. With these characters, with these minions, they were just one type of creature, very Gollum looking, very skinny with kind of mutilated bumpy heads. There's no hair, or if there is, there's very just small strands scattered about. Their ears are very pointy, and they're very skinny but also strong. And like I said, there are some large ones. And as I had written my comics about these characters, I wrote that they basically could choose when to change form, going from big to small. And now thinking about it, I am like, that is way overpowered. So I had to really, again, step back and ask myself what would work, what would make sense. So in this drawing, you'll see that I separated the different elements, basically, of how I wanted these creatures to be. So on the bottom right corner, you'll see as close as you probably could get to a Gollum knockoff. Not that they act at all like Gollum. These are more of the feral and I would say failed projects. All of these creatures, I would say, are mutations and things that were created by Arthur. Arthur is a curious person to a fault, I would say it is one of his faults in the sense that he would be willing to do anything to see how an experiment, how a mutation, how magic, how whatever thing that he's experimenting with will turn out. So with these creatures, he's taken basically humans that are either left for dead, people don't care about, are desperate for, and he brings them into his lab and he mutates them. He he experiments on them. They become his experiments. And for some people, they don't care, and for some others, it's a horror once they realize what happens to them. So, like I said, the bottom corner is more of one of his failed experiments, or just the reaction of this person becoming very feral, very animal-like, very vicious, and becoming almost more simple-minded, very listens to commands, that kind of creature, that kind of character. And then you have the character to the left who looks a lot more humanoid, but still looks a bit mutated. And that, what I say, would be one of his better experiments, where they still retain their intelligence, their presence, even maybe their will, but are enhanced by, again, Arthur's experiments, but they still all create that similar look. Also for just character design, of being able to tell, oh, this is another minion, of pointy ears, lumpy head, but a lot more structured and not so feral. The final creature that you see in the background, which you can barely tell because all you can see are his legs, is the giant form of the creature, which again I would say is separating the characteristics that I put all into one creature and rather have just some that were able to, or the side effect was they get large. So it's not like he has hundreds and hundreds of giants. It's more of, oh, this caused this person. Even would think that there might be like a few giants, but again, depending on the person, on the human, and the person that he works on, results may vary. So some may be half giant and mutilated, others might be giant but more feral, others might be giant and keep their wits about them, that sort of thing. So I think there's a lot of room for different variations of these characters without it being too overpowering that each and every one of them can grow and shrink whenever they will it. It just didn't make sense, and again, it was very overpowered. So I thought that this would be a better scenario, as well as showing more of Arthur's character by saying that he is not afraid to experiment and risk other people's lives for his enjoyment and curiosity. With Arthur's design, I kept some of the armor that he was wearing because in most of the pictures that I drew of him, it was when he is fighting and they're at war in like my third comic. So I thought that he's not dumb by any means. Arthur is very smart and very methodical. So he knows when to wear armor. Armor is good protection. So I kept certain elements of that, as well as giving him a cloak, which he does wear, and I also elongated his hair slightly, just in the sense of he doesn't really care about his appearance. I would say it would be another distinct feature. It was an element that I chose, honestly. Jumping back to the idea of his eyes going dark with more of a colored iris in the middle, I won't get too much into the world per se, but I will say that with Arthur, he is more of a scientist, an alchemist, someone who messes with earthly substances rather than diving into magic. But along the way, where dragons are very important, he stumbles upon dragon bones, and an essence, a spirit of an ancient dragon still lingers around these bones, and through a series of circumstances, Arthur and this dragon create a bargain where the dragon will give him powers and magic in order to enable him to live longer, to experiment longer, to be able to do more things with the power that the dragon will give him. And in exchange, Arthur will do things for the dragon, which leads into the plot of why he's attacking Elizabeth and her father and the kingdom, which I'm very excited, and maybe I'll turn this into actually something, I'm not sure, but I'm really liking where I'm taking this world and kind of the plot, and definitely having more of a solid storyline than where it was before. Well, what do you guys think of the transformation of Arthur and the minions? Do you like or are intrigued by the storyline and where it's going? I wanted to be pretty vague about it because I didn't want to give all the stuff away, all my storylines, because I may want to turn into a comic, which is kind of how it all started in the first place. I'm really enjoying diving back into these characters and really revisiting my storyline. So I hope that you enjoyed seeing the progress of my art over the past 14 years, along with the progress of my storytelling. So if you like this video, please like and maybe subscribe. I do nerdy things like this all the time, diving into art, different mediums, board games, all of that. So thanks again so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.